The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of bad. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throbbing my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too evil and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty.
Earnestly Podcast coming to you on Thursday, April 24th, 2024. It is officially NFL Draft Day. I'm not gonna do a comprehensive draft episode here at all. I had planned. I had 1 and 2, but then I think things fell through the cracks, so I couldn't really get that in. Oh wait, here you go. How you guys doing on number 1? So yeah, it is draft day. I got a couple thoughts on that. We also obviously we're gonna do a week with Greg Hrinya in a couple of minutes on here, but I haven't done a solo pod in a while. So I haven't had a chance to really talk about things on my own in a while on the show. I figured I'll use the next 10-15 minutes to do that. Like I said, today is NFL Draft Day. First off, before we get to all that good stuff, I'm on Twitter, X rather, at EJ Christian 7. Follow the podcast, of course, any podcast catcher on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts on the audio side. Also, if you follow us also too on YouTube, we have our own channel now, Earnest Speak Pod, youtube.com/Earnest Speak Pod on YouTube. Clips of the show as well too on there, as well as on TikTok at Earnest Speak Pod. Also, I'm also working on updating the Instagram page too very soon. There's a show page. I know I have my own Instagram page there, but there's also a show page I'm going to be working on over the course of the next couple of days to get that back updated again. But as I said, today is the draft. It's funny historically, through this 14-year ride, you guys don't know this already, but like through the 14-year ride, I've been hot and cold with the draft. I probably been more interested in the draft now in recent years, more commonly because of my fan of the New York Giants, obviously, and for the last 14 years, they've been more bad than good. In fact, they've been more terrible, which means they have higher picks in the draft pretty much almost every year. So the interest in the draft for me is only heightened now because of the fact that my team sucks. Early on in my adulthood, when the Giants were winning Super Bowls or at least getting the playoffs every year, and drafting in the 20s, wasn't as engaged. But the draft, at the end of the day, the NFL draft is a crapshoot. We have all this stuff, and I think that's the one piece of content we follow, probably in sports media and content creation in general, is that when college football ends in January, obviously you have now not even longer than that, literally a legit 4 months of nothing but draft talk and all these narratives and how the different draft stocks change and up and down. There were, remember middle of last year, Shedeur Sanders might be the number 1 pick in the draft. All of a sudden now we're day of the draft and he may not be in a top 10 quarterback in the order. I saw a mock from Peter Schrager that had Shedeur Sanders falling to number 21 to the Steelers. Jackson Dart was looked as a 3rd-round pick. All of a sudden now we're hearing teams leak out and things, reports saying that Jackson Dart from Ole Miss might be a top 10 guy. I mean, folks, it's lying season. They're probably telling the truth, but also probably lying as well too, and they're most likely lying because everybody's agents and teams are trying to play a game of cat and mouse, trying to get improved draft positions and trying to hurt stock and help stock and all that. All I gotta say is, when it comes to the draft, just enjoy it. As a fan, I don't get to obviously I'm interested in what the Giants are gonna do, and my thoughts on that. They need a quarterback first and foremost. Now, having said that, they do have the best. This is the best quarterback room they've had on paper in quite a while since Eli Manning. You have Russell Wilson for at least 1 year. Who's okay? Look, I know his stock is low, obviously these days, but Russell Wilson is still, in my opinion, is a solid quarterback. He's solid, but and of course James Winston's a backup. But again, my issue with that was more so, okay, we have this room, but at the end of the day, my concern is not about the Giants next 1 or 2 years. Because I know Joe Shane and Brian Dable on the hot seat. I know they want to be able to get this right to keep their jobs, but what's better for the New York Giants is thinking about the next 5 to 10 years. And I know there's a lot of, again, we can go back to Shedeur Sanders and his draft stock, how low it is. But this is what I've been saying, and I'm going to keep saying it. I would rather the Giants draft Shedeur Sanders and he fails with New York than he gets drafted late in the first round. And then he balls out. He becomes a star. He's an all-pro, Pro Bowler, MVP caliber player, turning a franchise around. And don't say we haven't had that conversation already with quarterbacks in recent history. Patrick Mahomes is a late first-round pick. And in short order, in 7 years, he's in the GOAT conversation. You had a guy like Josh Allen fall lower than he probably should have on the draft board. A lot of these scouts, they get really, really, they like to overthink the room. And I think what happens is that when they do that, they miss the mark. At the end of the day, complicated as it may be, and no matter how much talent a player has or issues or this and that, at the end of the day, it's a crapshoot. Very, very few times, especially a quarterback, have we ever, in my lifetime, very few times, in less than 5 players, I think in my lifetime, and I'm 40, I'll be 45 next week. There have been players that have panned out or met the expectations of whether they were drafted. In other words, guys we knew when they come to the draft, this guy is going to be an all-pro Hall of Fame guy. John Elway being one, was one. Peyton Manning was one. Andrew Luck is one. I'll even say Trevor Lawrence. Even though Trevor Lawrence probably is a little bit under expectations, I'm gonna call him a bust. He has to play for one already. So, so at the end of the day, this is a crapshoot. My thing is, I rather the Giants draft Shedeur and take a chance on that, and then hopefully he pans out well. But I'd rather him come here and fail than go somewhere else and he balls out, and that's my biggest fear. So again, Giants draft night, I have the obviously TV on that. I have the TV on the NBA playoffs. The NHL playoffs is here too, also. So I'm locked into that as well. So it's a great time, great time in the calendar, sports calendar. Couple of things before I bring in Greg. Couple of thoughts on the Shannon Sharpe scandal. He's being sued and accused of sexual assault. I want to say I don't know if rape wasn't. I guess it's the same thing. I don't know. But long story short, the rumors is that Shannon Sharpe was in a situation or a relationship, what do you want to call it, with a 20-year-old, 19-year-old influencer, and Shannon Sharpe was like 55, 56 years old. And there's been some volatile messages being sent back and forth, audio tapes and all that. He says it's a shakedown. She says she got assaulted. She's represented by Tony Busby, one of the the lawyer that sued Jay-Z, and then they dropped the lawsuit, and then Jay-Z's not suing him for liability and all that stuff. And the timing is strange too, because Shannon Sharpe is rumored to be getting a massive contract, I believe, with ESPN or somewhere. He obviously works at ESPN part-time, but he also has his own media, Shay Media, his podcast Nightcap, and Club Shay. So the timing is really, really funny on this one, given the rumors, and now this comes out. ESPN has said, internally, we're hearing that ESPN is most likely not going to bring him back, and probably until this thing is gone away. My thoughts are as simple as this. Let the people investigate. Let's not jump the gun here on, because it could very well be a shakedown. We've seen this before in the past. But there's also gonna be some truth to this also as well. And my thing is, as people who consume this content, his content, or people who don't like him, it doesn't matter. People who are consuming this story, is let the information come out, fact based, and let's see where that lies first. Okay. I don't have an opinion on this. Strong opinion on this anyway, because again, information is coming out left and right. I will say Tony Busby, to me, seems very, very, based on some of the optics I've seen with him through the years, sketchy. The best, I mean, is the word I'm going to use. But again, I don't want to also downplay someone that might have gotten assaulted. That's very serious stuff. And if this woman was really assaulted and by Shannon Sharpe, then he needs to be dealt with. But there's a lot of question marks there too also. And when you have talking about sexual assault or pedophilia and all this kind of stuff, there's a lot of he said, she said kind of stuff involved in that. And it's complicated. This is why it's important to let the information, the truth of information, that's fact-based and accurate, play out. And that's what I'll leave it at that. So one more thing to get out here. Bring in Greg anyway for our NBA segment. Recommendation for you guys. I haven't had a chance to really speak on this platform, but I recently finally got to see the MJ musical about 2 weeks ago with my wife. You guys know I'm a massive Michael Jackson fan of 40 plus years. And we've obviously, through the years to do this podcast, we've had a lot of discussions about his career. And I remember last year we did a 50-year anniversary, 50 years after his passing, a podcast with two good friends of mine. And we discussed his art and all that stuff in his life. And, but the musical has been out for a couple of years now. My mother saw the musical actually in New York with the original cast when it first came out in 2022, I believe it was. And I've been waiting to see this thing for a long time. Now, I am not someone that's really big on musicals in general, but I'm starting to get the bug a little bit because my wife, she's a big art person. She loves musicals. The first musical I really recently got me excited about this medium was Hamilton. And I enjoyed Hamilton, and not because of the fact, I mean, I was in a musical, but I'm into U.S. history, so that is for me was a big deal, and I really enjoyed that. Then my kids been obsessed lately with the Warriors soundtrack. There's supposed to be a musical on the Warriors coming out sometime next year. Lin-Manuel Miranda, who did Hamilton as well too, is behind all this. The Warriors movie, the musical was based on the movie that came out in 1979, which I for years never saw the movie at all, but I've been dying to see it for a long time. And I finally got, was my wife and I, when we saw the musical, heard about the musical, we decided to watch the movie for the first time. And the movie is a cult classic. It's a solid movie. It's not, obviously it's 1979. It's nowhere as precise as the stuff today, obviously, but it's a cult classic, and it's well done. The musical is well done. So I'm looking forward to that. So CMG the musical, being in that environment, it's not an environment I typically go to, but certainly now I do appreciate you more now. And I'm obviously I wanted to see from Michael, because for being a big fan I am. And I teared up, cried a couple times. You guys know how much MJ means to me and my family. Yeah, the takeaway for me was this: is that these you have a biopic coming out on him as well too later in the year. One of the things that I've realized is that these musicals and these movies and these things that come out on him, depictions of him rather, do him more justice than anything he could have done himself. Like a humanized. The one thing about this musical, I think more than anything else, did for me was that it humanized him in ways that I sometimes get lost in the sauce sometimes about how big this guy was, and I don't think people understand how big Michael Jackson was and still is really worldwide. Yeah, it was. It humanized him in ways. I mean, the story took place basically around the time he was starting to start the Dangerous tour in 1992, and then they peel off his entire life based around the core story of him getting ready to tour for the Dangerous album in 1992. So I want to put any spoilers in there, obviously. I want you guys to go see it. It was just here in Fort Lauderdale. It finally ended their stay last weekend. But the feedback I've heard from most people I've spoken to also who are not even fans is they absolutely loved it. So yeah, if you get to see it, chance to see Energy Musical in your area, look for it. Oh, it comes in your area, get tickets. I promise you will not be disappointed. So, all right, it's time to bring on Greg. Time to talk some NBA first round. As right now, 2 games in for each series. Now 2 games in, so we get to have a chance to react now to every single series, and we will also do the Kevin Durant Future draft. All right, time for NBA Weekly here with our guy Greg Hrinya, NBA author, analyst here. All right, so I guess every series, Greg, is now 2 games in the playoffs officially as right now, which is a perfect time to do this podcast right now. So, what's up, Greg? How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm content out right now, man. Because between the start of the playoffs, WrestleMania last weekend, and WrestleMania is really not just a 2-day thing anymore. It's a 1-day thing. That's a 2-day thing. But they also kind of attach the shows, SmackDown on Friday, Raw on Monday. So it ends up being a 4-day weekend of nothing but content. So between all that, NHL playoffs, I am content out right now. Overload.
Yeah. I wouldn't know anything about the wrestling, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah. All right. So let's start it first. We'll go through each series. Just get takeaways real quick. First one, let's go in order, I guess. 1 through 8, Heat and Cavs, 2-0 Cavaliers. Miami showed some fight in spots. Last night it came back, cut it to I think 3 last night in the fourth quarter, and then Cavs is a better team. What are your thoughts on the series so far?
I think they actually cut it down to 2. It might have been like 101-99, and then they scored at 103-99, and so considering how much Cleveland was leading by, I mean, I think it says more about the Heat to me that they're fighters, they're scrappy, kind of what we expected. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat got a game in Miami. I mean, you'd have to think it would be Game 3, because if they lose Game 3, they might just be in a position where it's like we're ready to go on vacation at that point. So, but they've played fairly well. I mean, the first game and Memphis dealt with the same thing. It's not like, I get it that a 1 seed should reap the benefits of stuff like this, but when you play a play-in game on Friday night and then you have a quick turnaround on Sunday, I mean, it was tougher for Memphis, obviously, because they were playing a noon game after playing a Friday night game. So, I mean, it's like a 36-minute turnaround, but still, like, not a lot of time to prepare. I think that Miami acquitted themselves better yesterday, and it wouldn't surprise me if they got a game. But I mean, look, we expected Cleveland to win this series, and they've played like a team that is going to win the series at some point.
Yeah, I've already hedged my pick on that one where I had Cavs 6. Now I'm going Cavs 5. I'm with you on that one. I mean, like I said, the Miami showed some fight. Eric Spoelstra on the teams wasn't going to show fight. Pat Riley, culture there. But in the day, you don't have a number 1. Like, you have Hero, who's having a phenomenal year, but he's really not suited for the number 1 role. You know what I'm saying? You're not building a team as him to being your main guy. Bam, love the guy to death, but he's not number 1. He's a number 2, number 3 even. So until you have a legit star, Cavs have that. They have Don Mitchell. He's a star. With great players. Every team. So until you have that, your ceiling is very, very low. So, do they get a game? I still get 1 game, but that's about it. So, that's my only takeaway from that series. All right, 2-7 Magic and Cavs. Magic and Celtics. Celtics are now up 2-0. No Tatum last night, no problem.
Yeah, I still expected them to win when they said Tatum was out. And to be honest, I thought that they were sitting him because they felt like not only could they win the game, but that they're just going to keep him out until they need him again. So, I mean, I wouldn't expect them to play in Game 3. I think if they lose Game 3, then he'll come back in Game 4, and then they'll win in 5. So, I mean, I think that they're probably going to try and slow play that. And, if they win Game 3, keep him out for Game 4, that sort of thing. So I wasn't necessarily surprised that they didn't play him. I'm also not surprised that they won. I think that Orlando's glaring weaknesses of not being able to score. I mean, last night was just horrific from the free throw line. Paolo specifically. And I mean, like, he's had trouble from the free throw line before, but I mean, here's a guy who can score 40 points, but has trouble making his free throws. So, and is a shooter. So, I mean, he misses a couple free throws and then he comes down and hits like a 20-foot jumper, like contested. It's like, how do you explain that? So they just don't have enough shooting. And I mean, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was brought in to be like the veteran guy that you could put on the other team's best guard and then also knock down corner threes. I mean, defensively, I guess they're okay. And they've always been a good defensive team, but they just have no shooting, no scoring. And people will say, oh, Jalen Suggs isn't playing. Mo Wagner isn't playing, but it's like, let's face it, if you're relying on those guys with no Jason Tatum to just be within 10, 15 points.
That's a problem. That's a massive problem.
Yeah, you have bigger problems than that. So, I mean, for them, I think the discussion has to be more like, how do we change this in the offseason? Because they're not a team that's been prone to make trades historically. I mean, a lot of it is taking shots on free agents, guys like, the Markelle Fultzes of the world, and then drafting, which, look, credit to them. I mean, the last big trade where they did was Vucevic for Wendell Carter plus.
Right.
So, I mean, like, they haven't, the GM there has not shown like a proclivity to make big moves. I feel like they need to go out and you're going to see this with a lot of teams. Like, just because you have good players now, like those good players can get disgruntled very easily. So, I mean, Paolo could get disgruntled after next season and say, I want to trade. So I think GMs are on the clock every day. It's not like you draft a guy and you're good for the next 8 years. Just because you have the potential to have the guy for 8 years under control doesn't mean that the guy's going to want to stay for 8 years. He might sign his contract and do what Durant did, sign a max contract extension and then say, I want out of here. So
I already teased like last year, and I know Magic fans hate this, so I said Paulo Banchero, future Heat player, Heat star.
Yeah, and I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't go out and at the very least add some shooting. Like, even if they don't go out and add a star or like, a big ball handler. Like, I'm not even saying that you go out and get like a Trae Young, but like, can you go out and get like a Cam Johnson, just add some perimeter shooting around Franz and Paolo? Like, I'd imagine that if you're not doing that, you're probably going to get disgruntled players at some point fairly soon. Because like they have good players on their team, but it's just like they can't score.
Right. All right. 3-6. You got Knicks and Pistons tied 1 apiece. Easily the biggest disappointment of the first round so far is the Knicks. Detroit. Detroit has been playing good ball. Like, I know the first game 1, the score looked like, Knicks blowout. That was a close game. Okay, that was a close game that they got out of hand in the middle of the fourth quarter. And we've already said in this podcast, like with the Knicks, there's pressure here for Thibodeau. Like, anything less than a game 6 loss in the next round against Boston is a failure. So, 1-1. Look, I have no doubts the Knicks win this series still, but Detroit's putting some confidence here. And if they split that, if Detroit, I mean, look, if you're a Knicks fan, you want to split it, but obviously, it would not shock me with the way New York's playing right now. If Detroit's up 3-1 in this series, by the time we get to the end of the weekend, I'm not terribly shocked the way they've been playing.
I mean, if it's 3-1 going back to New York, 3-1 Detroit, I mean, you might see the first firing of a coach ever in the middle of the playoffs. Like, I mean, we talked about it. We talked about it weeks ago that Thibodeau would be in trouble. And to be honest, I think that they're in for major changes regardless of how this goes. Like, even if they are competitive with Boston, I mean, just like I said before, like with the Heat's comeback last night against Cleveland, that showed me a lot more about Miami. This series has showed me everything about the Knicks. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from the Pistons, but the Knicks have just been embarrassing, atrocious, however you want to use it. Like, their style of offense is unwatchable, and to have that many good players on the floor and for most of the game just have 4 guys stand around and Brunson just pound the ball. Like, and I know people will say like, oh, Karl Anthony Towns has to demand the ball. Like, yes, to an extent, but he didn't score the entire second half. He had no shots in the fourth quarter. Like, I get that he hasn't historically been a big playoff performer, but as a point guard, it's also your job to identify mismatches and get the ball to where it needs to go. Like, I mean, there are so many possessions where like they'll have Mikal Bridges jog the ball up the floor, do a dribble handoff with Brunson, Brunson's got his back to the basket at midcourt, and there's 10 seconds left on the shot clock, and there's just 4 guys standing around. So yes, Detroit has played well, but the Knicks are making it super easy for them. And I mean, Thibodeau has been in the league, 30, 40 years. I mean, he's got to have a better offensive strategy than that, because that's a strategy that I could go out there and coach. So, I mean, that to me, it's been all about the Knicks and their inability to do anything, or their unwillingness to do anything. And save for a good out-of-body experience for campaign in game 1, like, they're down 2-0 in the series, and they should be down 2-0 because they deserve to lose both games based on how they played.
I agree 100%. All right, finally, 4-5 in the East. Bucks and Pacers. Indiana now up 2-0. Dame Lillard came back for game 2. I mean, I still think it's a series. I think I know it's going to Milwaukee, obviously, and Milwaukee should. I think Milwaukee win the next 2 games, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Pacers in 6. Would it surprise me if Milwaukee won the next 2 games? No. Would it surprise me if Indiana won 5? Based on what I've seen, I guess not. Although I would say the biggest downfall of the Bucks has been their lineups. I think that they have the players to not only be competitive, but to win this series, because you've got the best player by a mile in Giannis. But to keep trotting out Taurean Prince and Brook Lopez, you're spotting the other team 10 to 15 points every game. So, like, the first 2 games, Doc Rivers sent out the same lineup, and wouldn't you know it, midway through the first quarter, they're down by double digits. And it's like, those guys don't work in this series. Like, Brook Lopez cannot be on the floor. He could probably play against Cleveland in the next round, if they got there, because they've got a couple big guys that he could guard. But with Miles Turner dropping out to 3 and hitting threes, and then they put Miles Turner outside, then Brook Lopez comes to guard him, then Turner sets a screen, and then they get a switch onto Halliburton, and then Halliburton just cooks Brook mercifully. It's just, he is not designed for this series. I wouldn't play him at all, personally. Like, I would, if you want to start Jericho Sims, start Jericho Sims. Like Jericho Sims can't do anything, but he's super athletic. He can rebound, and he can at least run around the floor. So he can at least guard. I mean, Brook is just very slow-footed. And to be honest, the 3-pointers, I know he made a couple of them last game. Like, Indiana will live with Milwaukee running that as their offense. And then Taurean Prince, like, again, you play him 9 minutes, he's, -6. You play him 13 minutes, he's -9. He's just like, he's not enough of a shooter. I mean, I know that he was one of the top guys in the league shooting threes, but, like, he's not getting his own shot. So, I mean, you need other people to create for him. And so if he's only getting 2 shots in 3 quarters, then there's no point of even having him on the floor, because he's just terrible on defense. So I would say the first 2 things would be to get them out of there. I know people will criticize Kyle Kuzma, and especially after he had donuts across the board in game 1 and then missed the first 2 layups to open up game 2. It's like, oh my God, with this guy. But I mean, the one thing Kuzma has is that he's 6'10" and he's athletic. So, I mean, like, you can at least, if he gets switched onto someone, he can guard them in theory. I know there was the breakdown when it was a 2-point game with him and Portis confusing the switch. I think it was on Portis, but most people will say it was on Kuzma. So, I mean, like, not that it matters. The point is there was a miscommunication that basically cost him the game with 2 minutes left. But I still feel like he can move around, and if he gets isolated onto players, he can guard them at 6'10" and being mobile. Taurean Prince cannot, and Lopez doesn't have the athleticism to move around with Indiana. So, I mean, I feel like some lineup changes could go a long way. If Doc Rivers trots out the same starting 5, I mean, just like I talked about Thibodeau, I wouldn't let him finish the series. Like, ironically, 10 minutes before we came on, Shams just announced that the Bucks GM got an extension. He signed a multi-year extension. So now he would have the gravitas to fire Doc in series and not have to worry about any repercussions. So I'm just kidding about that. But I feel like there are adjustments that they can make that will make them more competitive in this series, or at least give them a chance to win. Given that, I mean, Bobby Portis is playing really well, and Giannis is obviously playing great. So, I mean, you've got 2 guys who are playing really well. I would play Gary Trent a lot more. I would play AJ Green a lot more. I would phase out Taurean Prince and Brook completely, and then I would go from there and see what happens.
Dame Lillard come back earlier than expected, though. Does that influence your pick a little bit? Like, you got
No.
Indiana in 5 and 4, right?
No. I had Indiana in 6.
You still even with Lillard back in lineup, you still Indiana in 6?
Yeah. I mean, they're spotted 2 games, so I mean, like asking, and I think Indiana's really good. So I mean, like I think that in the next series, like they will give Cleveland a run for their money. Not saying that I would pick them, but I mean, like I think that they're super well coached. Rick Carlisle's a good coach. He's like they get any shot they want out there. So I mean, like, and they have guys like Andrew Nembhard who like is just an average player all season, and every playoffs turns into like a superstar.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Indiana's that one team in the East, though. I feel like their ceiling is extremely high as long as they want to get there. I mean, like it's high to the point where like if they beat Boston, yeah. Will they? No, because they don't trust them. For the same reason why I think the ceiling's high, but the floor is low as well too.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not guaranteeing anything with them, but they certainly have the good coach and the pieces to be competitive against any team in the East. Like I think you would comfortably throw them in the mix with New York and Boston and Cleveland, although like right now you can't even make the argument for New York. I mean, if anything, you make the argument that Indiana is right now the 3rd best team in the East if we were doing a reseeding just based on play. So I mean, Indiana's good. And I thought Dame was good in game 1, like considering that he hadn't played in 5 weeks, for him to just basically come back out on the floor, give you 14 points. And he also spaces the floor. Like you have to honor him out there, whereas you don't have to honor Ryan Rollins. You don't have to honor Kevin Porter Jr. in the same way that you have to honor him. And then he also made the big 3 with 2:30 left to cut it to 2. So, I mean, he does make things easier. I think having 2 days off in between games 2 and 3 will help him get his legs back a little under him. The one thing I did like that Doc did was that he basically said that he was trying to get his minutes up as high as possible to try and get him in as good a shape as he could for the rest of the series. I think that's good. I mean, if you had played him for 20 minutes, how are you going to expect him in like a game 5 or 6 that you have to win to then go out there and play 35 minutes if he's only playing 20 minutes? So, I mean, as long as he's safe and as long as there's no risk of reoccurrence. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but, I think it's pretty miraculous he's even on the floor, and kudos to him for coming back that early. And because he could have easily checked out and said, this just isn't for me. But
I think he feels the pressure. Yeah. So that's okay. That's okay. All right, let's go to the West now. 1-8 Thunder and Grizzlies. 2-0 Thunder. I mean, what are we doing here? This is gonna be a sweep. So
yeah, I mean, I think we both picked a sweep before the series started. Oklahoma City has won the first 2 games by a combined 70 points. And to be honest, Shea has not really even played well. Like, I think based on his standards, he's been pretty mediocre, and they're still, they still dominated both games. I think Memphis will be pesky in game 3. And it might even be close in the last 5 minutes of the game. But if they can't pull out the game, it's gonna be a sweep. And I wouldn't bet on them pulling out the game. Just saying that I could see the game being like a 110-105 finish or something like that in favor of Oklahoma City. But like, I think that it'll be close. I think you will get their best effort. But more of the story will be just like with Orlando, what are they doing in the offseason? What is Memphis doing in the offseason? Because I think that the Jackson and Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane trio has sort of run its course. And I think you're going to have to move off one of them at some point. And
we have a lot of discussion about that over the summer too, especially. And that's come because I think we teased it like a couple months ago on the pod that Ja Morant could be Memphis in a situation where they can do easily as easily as they can get rid of. So if they want to get rid of Ja, they can do so. If they want to add a Kevin Durant, which we'll get to that in a second, they can do that as well too. So they can go either way depending on how they view their franchise right now currently.
And
but I will say this much, but
that's going to be the case for most teams. It's not just Memphis. I mean, there's probably going to be 25 teams, or maybe if you take out the tanking teams, but like there's probably going to be a good 20 teams that are looking at ways that they can overhaul their roster in some way, shape, or form, be it the Knicks, be it the Grizzlies, be it the Magic. And again, I don't know if there's an appetite among management to do that. They might just want to keep going along the same path. But I mean, there are going to be teams that are going to have to make a move, and maybe a rather big move. So I think you're going to have a lot of teams that are going to be in on a lot of the big names that are going to be rumored throughout the summer.
Yeah, and on the OKC side too also. I know people in sports sometimes overrate style points, but sometimes some certain teams need that to kind of, the Thunder, I think, needed the style points here, blowouts, because there's a perception that they're really good this year, but they're still really young. I think even we have said on the podcast that they're a phenomenal team, 6-8 wins, but would it shock us if they lost to Denver in the first, in the second round, or the Clippers second round? And we've said no, wouldn't shock us. And I think the style points these shows you that these dudes are not playing around. I know it's an 8 seed Grizzlies team, but they're not playing around though.
The one thing that concerns me a little bit is that they go into the second round against the Clippers, let's say, for example, and they haven't been tested in 4 games. And then you have a healthy Kawhi and Harden firing on all cylinders, and you get popped in the mouth because you were basically on cruise control for 2 weeks. So, I mean, now granted, you'd rather be blowing out Memphis than having 2 and 3 point wins because that wouldn't look good either. I'm just saying that, like, they are going to have a legitimate opponent in the second round that is every bit a finalist, like every bit a candidate to go to the NBA Finals.
Denver or the Clippers, absolutely. All right, 2-3, 2-7 rather, 2-7. Rockets and Warriors, tie 1 apiece now. Gene Butler got hurt in the first quarter of the game last night, did not return. Obviously, his status is now in question. Obviously, this will obviously tilt the series Houston's way if he can't play. Even so, if we're to assume Jimmy Butler's okay going forward, to me, with Houston was more about I got to see it. I know you're a 2 seed and you deserve your flowers, but at the end of the day, it's a different ball game when you're playing in the playoffs and Steph Curry and whatnot. So, but I mean, I guess right now, advantage Houston. If Butler can be off at least a game or two, that advantage Houston rather, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I picked Houston in 7 before the series. That was before Butler got hurt. Again, for me, I don't know what his prognosis is. I'm not a doctor. So, I mean, like, to me, it looked like he bruised his tailbone, which can be incredibly painful, and you can have trouble walking with that. So, I mean, I'm not diminishing that. Right. But I don't know if that means that he's going to miss game 3 or if he's going to miss the rest of the series or if he's going to be back game 3. So, I mean, I don't know where that leaves him. Obviously, if he doesn't play, I don't really see I don't see a pathway necessarily for Golden State winning the series if he's not there, because I feel like the workload is just going to be too great on Curry, where they can just keep throwing bodies at him and say, okay, Pajemski, Moody, Draymond Green, like, beat us with wide open shots, like, and we don't think you can do it. So, I mean, I think that if Butler misses any extended time in the series, they're in real trouble. I think that if Butler were completely healthy, it'd be a different conversation. After game 1, I looked at it and I'm like, I don't know how Houston's going to score in this series, because I thought the Jalen Green that played last night was going to be, obviously, I don't expect him to score 38 every playoff game, but like 3 for 15 in the first game, he was nightmarish. Fred VanVleet hasn't played well at all. I mean, he was 4 for 19 in game 1, and I think he had 2 baskets last night. So, I mean, he really has not gotten going, or maybe it was 2 threes last night. He hasn't gotten going at all. And so, I mean, I guess if you're Houston, and the way I looked at it after game 1 is that Houston could not have played any worse. They were like on a Knicks level of atrocious, and it was still a 3-point game with 6 minutes left. So, I mean, like, you probably look at game 1 that way, like, okay, Jimmy's there, Steph's there. They both had great games. They both shot over 50% from the field. They both played a ton of minutes. We've been terrible. Again, Jalen Green, 3 of 15. You have Fred VanVleet going 4 of 19. And so we're right there to win the game. So I think they probably felt pretty good after that. Obviously, if Butler doesn't play, you're going to feel great about every game sort of going the way that last night's went. And look, Golden State is much like Miami, where like they're a proud team. They've got a good coach. So, I mean, like, I don't think that if Jimmy Butler would have missed the series, that it would just be Houston in 5. I think it would still go 6 or 7. But I think that after watching game 1, I'm like, I was probably wrong with picking Houston in 7. But if that Butler injury is anything, it'll look like a much better pick, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, 3-6, Lakers, Wolves, also tied at 1. Both teams give each other blowout wins. I mean, I had the Lakers in 7 originally, the series. I don't feel it differently right now, to be honest with you. Although if Luka can play like that, the way he played in the first quarter, especially against Minnesota in game 2, then maybe that's the tilt right there. Minnesota has all the talent in the world to win the series. Even with Randall and whatnot, they can do it. It's just a matter of trusting who you're going against LeBron and Luka and those guys. But I have it going. I'm still in my 7-game series pick on Lakers right now.
I had Lakers in 6 before the series when we did this last week, and I feel the same way. After the first game, I was concerned, but then when I step back from it, not that I care who wins the series, but concerned for my pick. But like the odds of Jalen McDaniels going, 11 of 13. He's not like a great shooter, so for McDaniels to go 11 of 13, I wouldn't bet on that.
Bit of anomaly, yeah.
Yeah, and Naz Reid too. And look, Naz Reid is a perennial 6th man of the year candidate. He's a great player, but he was also hitting some ridiculous shots in Game 1. So I mean, that was probably a bit of an anomaly. I still don't think that the Lakers have played that well in this series. I'm also a little disappointed actually in Minnesota because I feel like they really had the chance to kind of go for the jugular last game. You steal Game 1. It's like, don't be satisfied with stealing one game. And I just thought they had a very laissez-faire attitude coming into it. And then immediately they're down 15 points. Yeah. So, I mean, they were never really in that game, even though they made it like 9 points. I think it was like 86-77 in the fourth, which was a really ugly quarter for both teams. But, I mean, I just thought that their attitude wasn't necessarily where it needed to be. And it just made me wonder if they have the maturity to win a series like this, knowing that the Lakers are really well coached. They've got two basketball geniuses on the floor in Luka and LeBron.
Yeah.
Big picture, though, I don't know that the Lakers are going to be able to withstand like a month and a half of this type of play, where it's basically Luka and a 40-year-old LeBron not getting much help, and the other team throwing as many resources as they have at those two guys. I just don't see it. So, I mean, not that they're a bad team. I just think, much like with Golden State, I feel like some of these older stars are going to be put through the mill before all is said and done, which is why, again, OKC is in such an advantageous position.
Yeah. All right, finally, 4-5, to me, the best series of the first round, and it's playing out like that way so far. Nuggets and Clippers tied at 1 apiece. I mean, honestly, the Clippers could be easy up 2-0 right now. They had that game. They had them dead rights actually in the Game 1, but what a series! And Kawhi Leonard, like we've seen it. Like if this is the guy we're going to get rest of the way, they are as you said on the podcast 2 weeks ago, or maybe last week, they are absolutely live to not only win the series, but they can probably steal from OKC and maybe find themselves in the NBA Finals. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I picked Clippers in 7, and a lot is going to hinge on whether Michael Porter Jr. is healthy going forward, because Denver is a team that's dead last in 3-point shooting to begin with. And he said during the post game last game that he sprained his right shoulder. So, I mean, I don't know where that leaves him, but if you take the best 3-point shooter base, not counting Jokic. I mean, Jokic is amazing. We know he's going to play 42 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
But if you take one of his outlets out that's going to space the floor, and then you replace that with Russell Westbrook for 40 minutes, I like the Clippers' chances a lot. So, I mean, even though we talk about how bad Jokic's supporting cast is, like they need Porter Jr. out there to space the floor. Even if he's not hitting shots, you have to at least respect him. If Russ is out there, it's just going to totally clog the paint. So, I mean, I think they're in big trouble if he misses any time. But even with him, I think that the Clippers, like, they look like a team that can potentially win a series. So, I mean, like, I felt good about everything that I've seen from them in the first 2 games, with the caveat of as long as Kawhi stays healthy. Because, like we talked about in the last series with Minnesota, like with McDaniels and with Naz Reid, some of the shots they were hitting were kind of an anomaly. What Kawhi is doing is not an anomaly. He's just never healthy. Like, if he's healthy,
that's what he does.
Yeah, these elbow jumpers that he's getting, like, that's his shot. It's like saying that's Kevin Durant's shot. Like, those are layups to him. So it's not as if he's doing something outside of him. Like, this is what he always does. It's just that he's never healthy enough to do it. So if he can stay healthy, they could be in the finals. But I mean, again, we've only played 2 playoff games. We've got to get there.
And I don't want to jinx anything, but he can get hurt. This is fast. This is fast as he has been playing well. He can get hurt. This is fast too, also. So, I mean, that's one of those things where, again, I it's not a knock on Jokic, man, but those pieces around him are hit or miss sometimes, man. I'm telling you that it's gonna be if Michael Porter Jr. is also compromised in the series, that's one less person for Clippers to worry about. So So, all right, okay, let's get to it now. We're gonna do officially our Kevin Durant's the focus here because we all assume that Kevin Durant will be moved. He has 1 million on his deal, but we all assume that reading all the tea leaves and what's coming out of Phoenix that it's more than likely he will be moved from the Phoenix Suns this summer. The question is where. So we've talked about this like behind the scenes, you and I, about good fits, and on the pod too, also about places he could play for, and we defend why it's a good fit here or whatnot. So we decided to do a 5-round draft, and we'll draft the teams of places that he could potentially end up there, and we'll defend our position why we believe he will fit in this X person in the situation. So, again, Greg, since you're the guest, you will go first. So let's kick off our Kevin Durant Futures draft.
Okay, I should put as a disclaimer that I don't think that it's a lock that he gets moved as much as I did maybe a month
of course,
ago.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say it is because it makes all the sense in the world for Phoenix to trade him and to start resetting. But I think the market for him is going to be much lower. Like, there's going to be 15 teams, let's say, that would want his services.
Yeah.
But trading what Matt Ishbia would deem acceptable for what they gave up for him and knowing a player of his caliber, I think there's going to be a disconnect there. So I don't know that a trade is going to be as easy as we might think, just because I don't see a team giving up a lot of draft capital, which is what Phoenix would require in a trade, plus a player who can play. So they would want an Andrew Wiggins and multiple picks it's like, I don't think Ishbia has any interest in resetting. Like, he doesn't have any interest in rebuilding, tearing
especially
it down.
now, if the rumors are true, they're going to Bob Myers.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, he's going to hire a guy that Bob Myers was a guy who basically kept Golden State afloat and never went down the rebuild route.
Greg, spoiler alert, the Suns are on the board for me. So staying in Phoenix is on the board for me.
Yeah,
spoiler
okay.
Alert. So pick your first team, and we'll go from there and defend why that's a good fit or good situation for Kevin Durant this summer and beyond.
Okay, so given everything that I just said, I don't think a trade is super easy, but I think that my number one team makes sense for a lot of reasons, and I think there's an easy way to make it happen and might be palatable for both teams. And I'm going to say the Knicks at number one.
Okay, I like that one. And this is also,
and I don't think it's enough to just say, oh, he should go to this team, and then not give like a trade or why it might work. So I mean, like, I look at the way the Knicks are going in the playoffs. I think that they have major changes coming. Not just in terms of the coach, but in terms of trying to reshape the roster. They obviously have a lot of good players. You know, maybe they fit, maybe they don't. Obviously, the first round will dictate a lot of how extreme they want to get with it. But I think that for Durant, they could easily do a Mikal Bridges sign and trade and just make it work 1-for-1. You know, maybe you throw a swap in there. Well, if I'm the Knicks, I would say, hey, Bridges is 9 years, 8-9 years younger than Durant. You're lucky to be getting a player of that caliber. We already know that Bridges got along really well with Devin Booker. He played well in Phoenix. And you could make the argument that Bridges might not love playing in this Knicks system necessarily because it's basically Brunson monopolizing the ball plus Towns. So when they're actually running an offense, it's a two-man game. And he sort of doesn't have like as defined the role. He plays his best basketball. And
he's the fourth option, I think, on offense in the starter. I think it's him, those two, then OG, then him.
Yeah. So when Brunson was hurt, Bridges was averaging, I crunched the numbers. I think it was like 22.4 points per game or something like that on around 50% shooting. So I mean, no, he's not the defender that he used to be or was expected to be, but 22 points per game on 50% shooting, like, you could make the argument that you'd sign up for that. And if you're the Suns and you have to get rid of him because he's going to be a free agent after next season, and, I doubt that he would re-sign there given the direction the franchise is going, I think Bridges would be good value for him. And that's not even incorporating any picks or anything. It's just a 1-for-1 sign and trade. And then,
it would probably be the most least damaging transaction for, hoarding off assets. And I think that the Suns will want picks. Not that the Knicks have a lot of picks to give. They might only have one or two assets that they can trade after everything they gave up for Bridges.
So, I mean, it's not ideal from the Knicks standpoint to just move off of him. But, if you get Kevin Durant to sign the Jimmy Butler deal, like a 2-year, $121 million deal, you could make the argument that, and then look, I don't know what you do with Towns. Maybe you try and move Towns in addition to that. Maybe you're overhauling it completely, and then you've got OG, you've got Durant, and you've got Brunson, and then you're going in a completely different direction, whether that's trying to move Towns for another star or whether it's trying to accumulate a lot of assets. I mean, Towns is going to be a second or third team All-NBA center. So, I mean, like, it's not like there won't be a market for a guy averaging 25 and 12. And not saying that they're going to trade him.
But it's weird, though, you want to get rid of Cat, though, because, not saying you, but because Cat was, he was on our All-NBA team this year, and our picks and on awards last week, and he'll probably be on the NBA as well this year, too, also. And, he was probably at one point this year flirting with the top 3 MVP discussion.
Yeah, and I'm not saying they're going to. I'm just saying that depending on how this first series goes, there's all sorts of ways they could blow it up. So, I mean, it's not as if that because they don't have picks, they don't have assets. So
I think their issues are Tom Thibodeau only. They have
and I mean, look, that might be an easy solution. And again, he's been terrible. So, I mean, like, what they've done in the first 2 games has been laughable. And then for him to come out in the post game and say that the officiating wasn't fair, like, the reason why you didn't get any free throws is because you were running ISO all game. Like, it's hard to get free throws just by telling your point guard, go bait for fouls. So, I mean, like, that is not an offense. And then to criticize the officials, like, no, that's on you. That's not on them. So, I mean, as for the Durant thing, I think that he might regret maybe not playing for the Knicks the last time he came to New York. And I think he could look at that and say, okay, they have Brunson. They have some good pieces around him. And look, even if you keep Cat, Durant, and Brunson and Anunoby, like, that's really good. And I'm not saying that'd be palatable for Phoenix. I'm just saying that, like, I could make the argument that if they go in that direction, that puts them in a better spot than they are today.
And healthcare aside too, also, notwithstanding anyway, you're probably getting 3 to 4 years left to Durant. Durant is, look at LeBron, and obviously LeBron is a god when it comes to the way he looks. But KD is top 15 guy in the league still one of the best scorers in the league. He's not, this is coming out of ego. He wants to play. And as long as he gets hurt, he's still valuable to a contending team. So there is that, you're not getting, it's 37 years old. Yeah, but it's not 37-year-old, Vince Carter. This is Kevin Durant, who's still a top 15 player in the league.
Yeah, I mean, he could be 45 and using a walker out there. He's still going to be able to get his shot because he's 6'11". And he's got a long wingspan, and he's one of the better shooters in the league. Yeah. So, I mean, like, his shooting, that's why, like, with the Achilles injury, it's like I'm not necessarily worried about him in that regard because his game isn't predicated on athleticism. He can get his shot at 35, at 40, at 45. He'll be able to make shots, and it's going to be nearly impossible to guard because there aren't that many guys that are 6'11" with that wingspan that can shoot like that. So, I mean, it's just a very – I don't think that if you're trading for him, you're only getting him for a year or two and then he's retiring. I think that he could have a 3, 4, 5 year rest of his career.
Right. All right. My first pick in the draft is going to be, I'm going to go straight homer here. You already see it. Miami Heat. Now, the only weird fit of this one is that KD isn't what you would call a quintessential leader, if you will. Like, he's not a leader of men in the same way, say, LeBron is or Jordan was. And it's fine because he's never asked to be that person. He wants the ball. He just happens to be one of the best players to ever play the game who does not necessarily want to be a leader type, whatnot. So that my only concern would be like who will be that guy for the Heat on the court? Because that was Jimmy's role before he left. Now Bam has kind of stepped up a little bit in recent years, taking that place, But I do think if Durant wants to go to a team that has a little bit less pressure, but also a team committed to winning, and to me, a culture and a team that can just use one piece and has pieces they can move also too to sweeten that deal. I think Miami is a great fit. Now, obviously, depending on what you lose, does a Durant Hero Bam combination challenge Boston in the East? I still have my doubts because I think Boston's roster is that much deeper. But it puts them in the conversation. It puts them in the top 6 conversation in the East, certainly. I will say that.
Yeah, and I had them high on my list too, Miami. Look, it makes them a better team tomorrow than they are today. So, I
Yes.
mean, that trade, me looking at it, is probably like Wiggins plus,
Pieces.
plus
Pick it too.
plus picks. Again, I don't know that I want to give up multiple first-round picks for a player that can be a free agent after next season. Not saying he wouldn't re-sign with Miami. It's just that given his age, given his injury history, and again, I'm not worried about him coming back from injuries. I'm just saying if he winds up missing 25 or 30 games, like, do I want to give up 2 firsts? I mean, I guess if you protect them, if you like lottery protect the picks, and
I do think having 1 year left in his deal though makes it where Phoenix may not have as much leverage as you think.
Oh, no, totally. They have virtually no leverage, which is why I think a lot of these trades are hard, because I feel like Ishbia isn't going to want to take back what teams are willing to give up, which is next to nothing, knowing that he's entering the last year of his deal. So I feel like so Wiggins and a pick is probably the best they can do, but is that enough for Ishbia to say, I'm giving up a top 15 player in the league and I'm taking back a decent role player who also misses a lot of games and a pick that I really probably can't move for something else?
Right. All right. Your second pick, third pick in the draft. What you got?
So my second pick, third overall pick, I have the Spurs.
I love that one. Love that one.
I will say that I feel like if Giannis becomes available, they're a much more natural fit for Giannis than anything else. But I feel like if Giannis doesn't become available, then Durant to the Spurs makes a lot of sense, because the Spurs really could go any direction they want. I mean, they have 2 lottery picks this year. They have Stephon Castle, they have Devin Vassell, they have Jeremy Sohan. And I mean, this is more making the argument for a Giannis trade, like a big trade. But if they don't want to give up a lot of those pieces and keep a lot of those pieces, I mean, if they gave up one of those lottery picks this year, plus Keldon Johnson, plus some salary, or plus, one of those young players, let's say it's like Jeremy Sohan, Keldon Johnson, and the 13th or 14th pick in the draft. Well, I guess it would be 4 teams. They lost the coin toss. So assume that they don't move up with that Atlanta pick, the 14th pick in the draft and salary and filler. I mean, that might be as good as they're going to get, given what else is available and a lot of stars being moved. Like we just said, if the market is diminished, that might be as good as you can do. And he's just a natural fit next to Wemby and next to Fox. You have 2 stars already there.
If it costs them little to get him in San Antonio, they're immediately in the title discussion.
Yeah.
If we're assuming Wemby's healthy, De'Aaron Fox, Wemby, and then Kevin Durant with all those little pieces around them. Oh my God! And the West is not outside of OKC for the next couple of years. Which team in the West are you looking at as like the dominant fixture? Like, I guess Denver's still kind of there with Jokic, but who knows how they look like in the next couple of years?
Yeah, and that's why I've made the argument more for Giannis than for Durant. But I mean,
and we'll do a separate one on that one.
And I know, but I'm just saying that the Spurs have so many assets. I mean, they've got most of their own firsts. They've got 2 lottery picks this year. Castle's going to win Rookie of the Year. Any team that's starting to rebuild, like if you're Milwaukee and you're trying to rebuild, starting with Castle is a good place to start, plus all the other assets. So, I mean, like, they can go in any direction they want. I don't know if they want to accumulate, if the Spurs would want to like slow play it, go for Durant, keep most of their assets, and then just add him to like an already deep team, or if they want to swing for the fences and try and put like, a super team on the floor. So, I mean, I don't know what the Spurs motivation is, but I think it's a pretty seamless fit. And they have so many assets that I feel like parting with 1 or 2 of them is a lot easier to keep your depth and still add a guy like Durant to that nucleus.
Right. All right. My 4th pick in this. This may shock some here. Maybe me shock you. But I'm picking the Denver Nuggets. So this is a team that, depending how things play out in these next couple of games and weeks and whatnot, could be in transition. I mean, they're already starting there with the new GM and new coach. But if this thing ends early this year, too, on top of that, now what? Now you're looking at Jokic, and obviously he's the future, but you look at the pieces around him. We assumed when they won a title 2 years ago that, okay, well, this course together the next 3-4 years, they should at least get one more title out of this, But now you have a year where you lose in the second round of playoffs last year in Minnesota. And then the year after that, you lose in the first round to the Clippers, hypothetically speaking, of course. How's that look now going in? That means the honeymoon period's over for the title. I mean, it probably is over anyway because when you fire the coach and GM that helped put together that team. Yeah, I think I bursted a couple weeks ago. So now what? You look at those pieces, and we've discussed in this podcast that Jamal Murray, while a very good player, we agree with that, is when we look at these contracts, he might have one of the 5 worst contracts in basketball. Not just because not because he's not good, just because of the fact that the value, the number versus the availability and the injuries and all these other things. Is he really that good? Is he really that worth that kind of money? And he got that money because of the fit with Nikola Jokic. Anywhere else, I don't think they pay him that kind of money. So does Denver get a little bit like desperate and say, we got to add a spark? We have a window, and this is the team now. When you win a title, you have a guy like Jokic he's not old yet, but he's he's in his prime. You want to maximize. That's the priority, is to maximize. Mm-hmm. Kevin Durant, again, he's 36, 37, but he's not your typical. He's not Vince Carter. I mean to pick on Vince Carter here, but you're getting Kevin Durant fits the Denver Nuggets timeline right now, based on where they're at with Jokic in that core. And I looked at the contracts for example, some of the pieces around them. Jamal Murray might be the one guy you can't really move because he has 4 more years left in his deal and making 50. Was it next year at 46, then 50, then 53, and then 57? He ain't moving. However, Porter Jr. has 2 years left in his deal, 38 and 40, and then Aaron Gordon, his contract is actually more friendlier, 22 and then 31. Oh, no, and then 34. Oh, well, never mind. 34, 37. Okay, never mind. But still, the number's a lot lower.
He signed an extension, I believe.
He did, yeah. But the number's a little bit lower than Porter Jr. So, and I think you'd rather keep Gordon than Porter Jr. just because of the ability aspect of that. Having said all that, I can see a scenario where they can move one of those two guys and bring in Kevin Durant.
And it's a good pick. He would be a great fit there. And to be honest, Jokic has had so much success with Jamal Murray. I think that he likes Murray being there, and if they could just add Durant on top of that, and that's your core 3, I think that would obviously make them title contenders tomorrow. And I mean, you can make the argument that, look, I know they're title contenders now because of Jokic. Jokic is amazing, but I mean, his cast is limited. I feel like adding Durant to that gives him a legitimate star caliber,
nice shot in the arm.
Yeah, wingman that he's never really had before. So, I feel like it definitely changed the dynamic of their team to where they're a more legitimate threat than they are now. I think Porter would be the natural guy to go. Would that be okay for Phoenix? You'd probably have to throw in a couple of the younger guys. Would a trade of Julian, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I don't have the trade machine in front of me, but would Porter Jr., Julian Strawther, and Pickett or Watson, one of those two, let's say Peyton Watson, just for argument's sake.
The only thing attractive about Porter Jr.'s contract is that it's the smallest in terms of the duration. It's the smallest of the bunch. It's 2 more years left, so you have you eat 1 year at 38, and then on the expiring year, you can maybe use a tradable contract somewhere else.
And also, maybe you look at, if you're Phoenix, can we do a little rebuilding on the fly? Can he step in for Durant? And he's never really been a featured player. Can we rehabilitate his image to the point where maybe he averages 25 points a game because he's getting a high volume of shots and he's given an opportunity he's never gotten before? And then at that point, could we then move him for multiple pieces after that? Or does he turn into something we want to keep? I feel like next year probably should be, if they're trading Durant, more of a transition year. I know that Ishbia is not going to want to tear it down to the studs, but can they reassemble their pieces and then maybe learn something about those pieces going forward, be it whether they want to move a guy like Porter Jr. if they can get his value up, or is he good enough that they could add around him and Booker? I just don't think that the appetite is going to be there to totally tear it down. So you have to try and give them pieces that might make sense. And maybe they could make the argument Julian Strawther is a good role player when he's healthy. Watson's been a good player. And if you're Denver, you're trying to maximize Jokic's window, like you said, so you'll part with some of those pieces. And, you're not giving up first-round picks. You're giving up guys who are nice role players and maybe will be better with more opportunity, but they're not ever going to be stars, but they can still be useful to a team that's got no depth like Phoenix. So, I could see that making sense.
All right. Round, I guess, 3. Third pick for you? Your third pick. the 5th pick in the draft.
Yeah, so I mean, much the same as with San Antonio. I have Houston. I think that I know there's been a lot of talk lately from like Mark Stein and Chris Haynes that Houston has got loftier goals, I think, than Durant because of his age and all that. But let's face it, like if Durant's the only guy that's on the market, I think ultimately Houston's season is going to end, whether it's in round 1 or round 2 or 3. Like I don't see this team winning a title, and what's ultimately going to be their downfall is their shooting. So then at that point, what do you then move off of to get some shooting? If you can't get one of the major players, I feel like Durant certainly makes sense. And they have so many assets, just like with San Antonio. I mean, they've got the entire Phoenix draft. So I feel like because they have their draft, it's probably an easy swap to just say, we'll give you your 2027 first back and some salary. Would Reed Shepherd, Dylan Brooks, and another salary at Jock Landale and your first back be palatable? You're getting a young point guard who was the 3rd pick in the draft last year. Maybe there's no room for him going forward in Houston. So that's a valuable piece. And then getting your own pick back, that's also valuable. Like for a 37-year-old who's going to be a free agent after next year, like that's pretty good value. And Houston really wouldn't be moving anything off their core. So they're still keeping a lot of their guys. So, I mean, I feel like much like San Antonio, that's an easy trade, I feel like, for Houston to make. I don't know if the desire is there for Houston, but given that I feel like shooting is going to be their downfall at some point in this playoffs based on how it looked in game 1, I don't think you can argue with the idea that they should add some perimeter scoring.
Right. And of course, Houston, I'm surprised. I'm surprised he didn't drive Houston a little higher, but because you've been kind of teasing that for all year long, actually, on the show. So, but yeah, Houston.
Yeah, but I think it's gotten to the point that the assets that Houston has are so valuable that it's like they could go big game hunting. Like they could, like if they wanted, again, Giannis would be the obvious one, but also if a Trae Young, if a John Morant, or if like a
Giannis fit. To be honest, Giannis is probably better fit because he fits the timeline better than Durant.
And so it's funny. I was watching. I saw a clip online, and so I watched it through, and it was from First Things First with Nick Wright and Chris Broussard, and they made the case for Houston, and basically the trade was Reed Shepherd. Who else was it? It was Reed Shepherd, Alperen Şengün, and I think Jock Landale for salary purposes, and 4 firsts, 2 of them being.
I would never get rid of Şengün though. Şengün's one you want to keep the
you have to realize that if you're looking at it from Milwaukee's standpoint, you need to get pieces back for Giannis. If Giannis is the 2nd best player in the league, what is Şengün? Is he the 20th best player? Like they've got to get something back of value. And so I would say
get draft picks then.
Well, yes, but I mean, you also need something to sell your fans. So, I mean, I don't know that Milwaukee is just looking for draft picks. So, I mean, I feel like they're going to need some young players, and that's where Reed Shepherd comes in. And again, I think that the price for him is going to be astronomical, that if he were to become available. So that's why you're talking about with San Antonio, a Stephon Castle who's going to win Rookie of the Year. You're talking about a Şengün who's already like an all-star. You're going to need something going back in addition to the picks. So, I mean, and look, maybe that's not the move. Maybe you're trading more than 4 picks. Maybe you're trading 5 or 6 picks, and you're trading Dylan Brooks' salary instead of Şengün's. I mean, like I'm sure there's different ways to create a trade. And maybe it's Jabari Smith in the deal along with
maybe
Reed Shepherd. So I mean, and again, I know this is veering off of Durant, but I'm just saying that like the reason why I moved Houston a little lower is because I feel like they have so many assets because the Suns draft picks are just so valuable given that they look like they're kind of screwed. So if you have their 25, their 27, their 29 firsts, that's a good place to be. And I think that those picks hold a lot of value across the league. So I don't know that Durant would be worthy of like moving off of multiple picks, let alone one of them. And look, Houston could always trade a protected first of their own, because they still have all their picks. So, I mean, they could move that too.
All right. My 3rd pick, 6th pick in the draft, top 10. You just teased a little while ago. I'm going to go Milwaukee on this one. I already teased it months ago on the show about depending where the team sees themselves. Are your team trying to add a piece to win a title? Are your team trying to keep your core together? Or are your team trying to sell off? Milwaukee's in that kind of that weird place now where like Giannis's peak is right now, but we've also said that Giannis's peak could be shorter because of the fact that his skill set is not as broad as say Kevin Durant's is. Like if Giannis had even half of Durant's perimeter game, I'm not worried about Giannis into his 30s. But it's not, and I'm not. I feel insulting saying that comparing to Joel Embiid, because Joel Embiid's issues more about injuries, because Giannis is very durable. But because Giannis's game is not, it's all bully ball based.
Yeah.
As it gets older, that will diminish. You know what I mean? And then what do you have? KD has that. So the question is now the window. So Damian Lillard's what, 35 now? His window's maybe
he's 34, but he'll be, assuming that they get bounced first round. So next year, you've got a 35-year-old point guard.
Now, granted, his game also, like Steph Curry, can age as well too. Also, so he still has a realistic 3 to 4 year window. Okay, Giannis probably 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years if he continues to keep himself healthy. Kevin Durant fits that window. So if you're a team like Milwaukee that's still trying to see themselves as a contender but needs more pieces, he's probably the cheapest piece you're going to get right now that still fits your timeline. So KD will be a great fit there. It will open things up for Giannis in the paint. And I think you can make an argument that team with Durant in tow, as long as you keep some of those young pieces, can compete with Boston and Cleveland in the Eastern Conference right now in the immediate future.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Durant would be a great fit next to Giannis. The only issue that I have is that I just don't know how the logistics of that trade work, because I think if you look at their cap sheet, pretty much their entire team is free agents outside of Kuzma, Dame, and Giannis. So, I mean, like, Portis.
Well, Kuzma would definitely be one of the pieces out of there. There's no, I don't see any scenario.
But he's only making $22 million, and Durant's making, off the top of my head, 45. So I feel like the only trade.
No more than that. I think 55 or something.
Whatever he's making, Kuzma's only making 22, and they don't have enough salary on their books, I feel like, to make that deal. So I feel like the only trade that works for Milwaukee is if you're trading Dame for KD. Because I don't.
And why would you do? And the thing is, why would you do that if he's one of the core pieces, right? I get that. Durant is making 54 next year. Yeah.
Okay, so he's making 54. Kuzma's making 22.
Sorry.
So you would still need another major salary in addition to Kuzma to make that deal, and they just don't have it under contract. So I feel like the only way to make that work. And look, if they get bounced in the first round and they're like, we're not trading Giannis, we're going to empty every chamber trying to put talent around him, and they want to shake it up, they could change the coach. They could also get rid of Lillard, replace it, because that's the only way that they can make it work, I feel like, financially. Because other than that, like, their roster is basically like Kevin Porter Jr., AJ Green, and a couple of two-way guys. I mean, like, literally everyone is pretty much a free agent. Gary Trent Jr. signed a 1-year deal. Taurean Prince signed a 1-year deal. Bobby Portis has a player option. Brook Lopez is a free agent. So, and I mean, look, I think that Brook is either going to retire or they will just bid him farewell and thank him for his services. So, I mean, like, you can take that $30 million or whatever Brook is making and cut that off their cap right off the bat. But I just don't know what else you have to trade. Sorry, I lost you for a second.
No, sorry. There's a little Wi-Fi issues here. No, I think logistics make it tough. And when you work it down, it's like, because even though Kuzma's contract is very, very friendly, you still need to find more $40 million somewhere else to make that work.
And look, you might be able to say, because Milwaukee has no one under contract, they can trade Kuzma's 22, absorb Durant's 33, and then combine it with Dame and although I guess that would still put them over the cap, I don't think they'd logistically be able to do that. But I mean, let's say theoretically they were, and they were able to do a 1-for-1 swap. Milwaukee's only got one tradable first round.
Well, here's the thing. If we agree Giannis number 2 in the league right now, gotta keep the guy happy. Gotta keep him happy.
Yeah. No, I mean that's why I think everyone is theorizing that he's a logical choice to be moved, just because, like, they've probably run out of options. And he's never given any indication that he'd want to leave. So, I mean,
Giannis?
Giannis. He hasn't, said that if we don't win this year, I'm going to have a discussion with management. Like, he hasn't even gone that far. So, I mean, it's just theorizing based on the lack of available resources they have to move. And look, KD would be a really good fit next to him. But unfortunately for them, the only way to make that work logistically is to trade Dame. And then you're probably looking at a roster of like Kevin Porter Jr., AJ Green, Bobby Portis, Durant, and Giannis. So, I mean, like, you're just like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, I feel like, at that point. Although, I mean, look, with how Giannis is playing now and Durant's ability to still score 30 points a game, maybe that's a lot more palatable to them, and maybe it's something they'd be willing to try. I have no idea. I mean, obviously, if you could just slot Durant in next to Dame and Giannis, it would make all the sense in the world.
But to your point, you may have to move those big contracts to make that work. So
yeah,
I'm with you. All right, 7th pick in the draft, round 4. What you got?
Yeah, so I have a couple teams left. I mean, Minnesota I guess would be the next pick in my draft, just because Randall's going to be a free agent, and I feel like they're going to have some decisions to make in the direction they want to go. And I feel like with A-Rod now an owner of the team, if he was a star baseball player, would it make sense that a star baseball player would want to acquire one of the biggest stars in the league? And also maybe from a mentor, like a mentorship value to a guy like Anthony Edwards, seeing Kevin Durant on a daily basis, how he conducts himself, his work ethic, etc. Because, I mean, we talked about when we were going through the series, like, I thought that Minnesota showed a lot of immaturity in their last game, just given the fact that they had a chance to really take a stranglehold on the series, and it was almost like they were just satisfied getting out of there with one game. So, I mean, I feel like there's going to be an empty power forward spot there. Would some sort of would a sign and trade work? Would they be willing to move off of a guy like Rob Dillingham? And I don't think they have a lot of assets, but would a first, Rob Dillingham, and then a couple of their wings, would that make sense? I don't know. You might have to move a guy like Jaden McDaniels. I don't know if that works, for them. He might be a guy that they love. But look, if they get bounced in the first round, it's the same argument that a lot of teams are going to have. Like, how are we going to build this going forward? And they've got the same discussion that the Spurs are going to have with Wemby, with any of these teams are going to have. How do we keep our guy happy? Because I don't know that they can just rely on, okay, we have Anthony Edwards locked up for the next 5 years. Like, he could come out tomorrow and say, I want to be somewhere else. So, I mean, I feel like teams have to be cognizant of the fact that they have to keep their young guys happy. And how do you keep them happy and not do what Durant did and demand a trade? And that's by adding pieces around them and making their life easier. So, I mean, I don't think there's any better player to do that than Durant.
Yeah, Minnesota actually is on my list too also. He doesn't necessarily fit the Anthony Edwards timeline, but, if you're trying to win now, he may fit the timeline in terms of Edwards' new contract. And if you don't win now, he may want to leave.
And also from the reports I heard, this was from Michael Scotto on Hoops Hype, that Minnesota was one of the teams that inquired about KD at the deadline. So, I mean, like, there was a desire.
I tried already then. Yeah.
For him then. So, I mean, I know Randall's going to be a free agent, but, like, if you were doing it at the deadline, does a Julius Randle, a Rob Dillingham, and maybe another young piece, and like a protected 2031 first or something like that, does that work for Phoenix, because they're getting 3 guys for 1 and a young point guard? Like, I'm just trying to make it work where Phoenix is getting something in addition to trading out Durant.
Right. Yeah. Again, he doesn't fit the Minnesota timeline. He does fit the Anthony Edwards timeline. So we're maximize Anthony Edwards now while you can before he gets disgruntled and wants to leave.
Yeah.
So
totally.
That's what I think. So, okay. My pick now, 8th pick. I'm going to go with the Clippers. Again, timeline. He fits them perfectly. I think the only issue you have there is, can him and James Harden make it work? What they have in the past, they did it before in OKC. Obviously, I can't really use Brooklyn because I think the clash is really between Kyrie and Harden, not so much Durant. He fits a timeline. They're trying to win now, and depending on how this series goes with Denver and beyond, is Steve Ballmer going to get more desperate and lock in? You maximize Kawhi here. I mean, you're right now get healthy Kawhi, but you have to figure the next 2 years of his contract is going to be out a lot. So KD is a nice insurance policy to have alongside James Harden. Yeah, they are they going to be the old man group a little bit now? Stars, yeah, a little bit, but they're still really good players. And depending on how things end up this year in the playoffs, they may have some. Look, they got Ty Lue's coach. You have a deep roster. The Western Conference is really outside OKC again, and whoever steps up is pretty wide open. They're one of those teams in the mix, so it does make sense for this one. You're looking at a 2-3. You're looking at you signed Durant, for example. Let's say they lose to Denver in this series, but you sign Durant. You trade some pieces here and there. Now, you know right away you're getting you have a 2-3 window with this core. That's it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Clippers roster in terms of moves that would make sense. I think you're probably looking at Norman Powell, Derrick Jones Jr., and maybe Bogdanovich as salary cap filler, since next year will be the last year of his deal. So I mean, you're kind of getting some expirings if you're. Powell's in the last year of his deal too. So I mean, Powell helps you. I mean, he had a career year this year shooting. So I mean, he's 31. I don't know if that helps Phoenix necessarily.
Phoenix, right?
Yeah, but I mean, you're replenishing your depth. I can't see LA moving either Harden or Zubats, given that both of them are probably going to be all NBA players this year.
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like you got to move Powell, and you have to move a bunch of your other wings that are free agents, and then maybe a pick. So I mean, it's not outlandish to think that Ballmer would have an appetite for wanting to put the team on the next level. I mean, look, we've seen it with a lot of owners. I mean, we've seen Ishbia do it. We've seen the Nets owner do it. We've seen countless owners do it where they get impatient and they want to go for the shiny object. And I mean, he would fit really well with Kawhi and Harden, especially if you still have Zubac.
And this actually in a lot of ways protects Kawhi too also during the regular season.
True. Yeah. And it allows you to sort of massage Kawhi through the year without having to worry about him playing 60 or 65 games. Maybe you can get away with him playing 50, sitting almost half the year while they sort of, manage his workload. And then you still have Harden, Durant, and Zubats. I mean, that's pretty good. So, I mean, I think that would make a lot of sense. I don't know that Phoenix would necessarily want to just take back like expirings. You'd be getting 2 expirings back. You'd be getting Derrick Jones. Maybe you're getting a pick. Would that be enough for them? I don't know. But I mean, it certainly makes sense for the Clippers. So I mean, I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah. All right. Your last pick, number 9, 5th round, final round.
I would say OKC, and I would leave it with the caveat of if they flame out in the playoffs this year, and do they flame out because they're missing scoring? I feel like that's a pretty easy deal to do, just given that OKC has got a massive amount of assets. I mean, they could trade Nikola Topic, the guy they drafted in the first round last year, who had a torn ACL. So, I mean, he's been rehabbing, but I mean, young point guard, like 6'7", European, would that be palatable? And then they have 3 first-round picks this year. So do the salary, you're probably talking about Kenrich Williams, and I mean, you're not touching any of the main guys, obviously. Yeah. I don't know that they could necessarily get there salary-wise, but I mean, I'm just looking at OKC, like, if they were to lose in the second round to the Clippers, do they then look at it and say, we've got so many assets and we haven't gotten any closer to winning a title? What is a piece that could put us over the top? And look, you could mention them for Giannis too, and which is why, again, I think that
I was going to say that.
Because at that point you could trade either Chet or Jalen Williams, one of them. Obviously it wouldn't be both of them, but I mean, if you traded one of those guys, that's a blue chipper going back to Milwaukee, plus they have a plethora of picks. I feel like that, again, I don't know if they have any appetite for that. Being in a small market, they might say, we just want to keep building the way we're building and always having the flexibility to go in any direction we want. But does Shea then get disgruntled that, like, oh, I just had an MVP season and we're not doing anything to improve this roster? I mean, look, they won 68 games this year. But look, if you win 68 games and you get bounced in the second round, and I'm not predicting that, I'm just saying that they will loom as a potential trade partner for a number of players if they don't go as far as we all think that they should go.
Yeah. No, I think the Thunder thing will be interesting too. Also, it'll be a nice feel good story too. Also, him coming back to the team that drafted him. It'll be a definitely a little shot in the arm. Now, this is also assuming that they flame out in the playoffs, which I don't see happening at this point.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either, but I'm just saying that like they have that capability of doing it. And for like the 10th, for our 9th or 10th pick in the league, I feel like that's like a dark horse option if for whatever reason it doesn't work out.
Right. The last pick in the draft, and I told this before in the past. I think I was actually in line at Disney World discussing this with you. But we were texting each other. I think it was back in February or March, I think it was. But the Grizzlies. Mm-hmm. Now the caveat here is also they're kind of like Milwaukee. Are they going to stay pat? Are they going to be sellers? Are they going to be buyers? And what makes it tougher in this situation is that they already fired their coach. They fired the coach days before the playoffs started, weeks before the playoffs started. So that makes it complicated. So when you get a new GM, how does he feel? Does he feel like this team roster is good enough with another piece? Or do you have to get rid of John Morant? Or get rid of what pieces they want to get rid of? So if they view this team as a piece away, Kevin Durant, I don't know if Durant fits the timeline, though, to be honest. That's the only thing I think with Durant is that Memphis is one of those young-ish teams, but he'll fit in anywhere. But I don't think there's as much urgency to win in the same way. So is that somewhere Durant will want to be? And then, of course, the job thing's always pending. So it's definitely on the less likely side this happens anyway, especially now with post-Jenkins firing. But they're definitely one of the teams to look out for, I think, because they're one of the teams that are considered a contender that needs a piece. But again, I just don't know how this team values, or whoever GM will be taking over this team values this roster, currently constructed.
Yeah, and knowing that Memphis is probably going to have to blow this up in terms of trading one of their big three, I think this is actually probably a pretty logical trade spot, because I feel like this is an easy trade if the two teams chose. Whether it's Morant or whether it's Bane, Morant makes $39 million next year.
That's not bad, actually.
Bane makes almost 37 next year, and I mean they're both Morant's 25, Bane's 26. So I mean that would fit on a timeline with Devin Booker. So I feel like they wouldn't have to throw in any picks. Like let's just use Bane as an example. Like if you're trading Bane, Brandon Clark, and one of the young guys like a Vince Williams or a Gigi Jackson or another young player, I think if you're Phoenix, you could get behind that. And if you're Memphis, it's like we need to shake things up, regardless of whether it's trading John Morant. I could see Ishbia being like, oh, we'll pair Morant and Booker and have the best backcourt in the league, that sort of thing. Or Bane fits on the timeline. It's another shooter. You could play Booker at the 2, Bane at the 3, or have Booker handle the ball and Bane play at the 2. So, I mean, they also have Scottie Pippen Jr., who they could say, like, if we move Morant, we feel comfortable giving him the reins for next year. If we're adding a forward like KD and moving Morant. So I feel like they have two guys that are easy trade targets depending on which guy they want to move. Not saying that they won't move Jaren Jackson. Jackson's up for an extension this summer too. He's only under salary for $23 million next year. So I mean, he's probably going to be up for a max contract. So I mean, they're going to have decisions to make, and I think that one of those guys will not be there next year, just given the second apron. And do you want to be paying those three guys $50 million a year at some point for this to be the ceiling? So I think that it's logical to want to rearrange the pieces a little bit, and I don't think
I think this late season dip really took the air out of the balloon, because I thought when they were kind of one of those quiet teams in the West. They were number 2 for a while. They were hanging out around. August obviously ran away the whole thing pretty much early, but you had that 2 through 4 spot where it was Memphis a while. It was Memphis and Denver and those teams, and then like February came around and this just started to lower down the standings. Next thing you know, they're playing, and now they're playing team, and like where does this happen? So and then you obviously fired the coach. The air of the balloon came out, I think, in February. So I'm looking at this team as I might have put odds on Durant going to Memphis. It'll be on the lower set of odds, but I'll give it some odds because of the fact that if they decide to get in the market for him and want to try to win with this core and believe in this core still, then there's a piece for there, and a piece that would not be hard to acquire.
Yeah, I don't know that it makes sense to trade a 25 or 26-year-old for a 37-year-old, but the salaries at least work out if they want to go in a different direction and they don't want to be beholden to paying.
Saddle those three, right?
They don't
saddle those
saddled
salaries
with all
later on the
those
road.
salaries, yeah.
Right, and obviously, I mean, if John Morant wasn't a concern off the court, always been good, but it wasn't a concern off the court, I would say that they would have no issue, running off Baines. But the fact that I still think I think there's still a lot of apprehension around John Morant in that office, honestly.
Sure. Yeah,
and they need more. They need a larger sample size of him being a good citizen before they can say, okay, he's a good kid. We can do this. So, all right, that's your Kevin Durant future draft. We'll probably do one of these also on Giannis. I know you mentioned you want to touch on Giannis, and I think the Giannis one's actually very interesting too, also because that's the one where it's more likely not that he won't go anywhere, but it's still very, very, very possible that he may just say, I'm done. I'm done. And things can get volatile there really quickly, depending on, how he feels with Doc and the team itself and where they're going to be going. And so that's the one I'm looking forward to doing.
I think Doc will be gone. If they flame out in the playoffs, especially given that coaching was the easiest thing to point to in the first two games. I mean, obviously the roster's not perfect, but I mean, throwing out the starting lineup he threw out there, I think that there's a good chance, regardless of what the decision is, that the coach will be gone and they'll be going with someone else.
That's three coaches in 2 years, dude.
Well, that's what Phoenix did too. So I mean, sometimes it's
how's that working out for them? Like seriously.
Yeah. And look, if Giannis is there, they need to give him another pathway to finding success there. And if he's not there, why would you want Doc with a rebuilding team? So I don't know that Doc makes sense going forward really from any standpoint unless they win this series. Yeah. So, I mean, so that I think that will be the discussion at that point. But because of his age being 30, going on 31, I feel like that will bring probably 10 to 15 teams into the bidding for him. Whereas Durant, I feel like has a much more I don't want to say predetermined scenario, but he basically has to go to a place where he's just fitting in and
he's real value. Well, the thing with Durant, he can fit anywhere. I think for Durant though, and where he is age wise, he has value to solely contender.
Yeah,
that's it.
Exactly.
You're not building like wherever Durant goes at this point now. You're not. I don't want to say you couldn't, but why would you? You're not building around him. He's an added piece. Even though he's probably the most expensive and the most valuable added piece in history of basketball. He's an added piece. Whereas Giannis, you can make an argument that he goes to a new team, you can still rebuild around him for another 5 years.
True, but would Giannis want that? Like, does he? I mean,
correct.
If he's leaving Milwaukee, wouldn't he want to go to a ready-made team like a San Antonio, for example, where he slots in, and now you've already got Wemby and Fox there. That's an easy fit. He's got to go somewhere, I feel like, where the price for him is going to be so exorbitant. It's got to be a team that can withstand the loss of all the assets that it's going to take. Because ultimately, he's still got 2 years under contract after this one. Milwaukee doesn't have to trade him. Even if he requests a trade, they can do it on their timeline, much like Portland threatened with Damian Lillard. Like, they didn't make that trade until September. Like, they didn't feel like they had to rush the trade and make a deal overnight because Dame was under contract for 4 years. Giannis under contract for 2 years. It's an easier move with Durant because he's an expiring.
The more years in your contract, the more leverage the team has.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's simple. All right. Last thing to get you out of here. Non-basketball here. So I told you, we figured out a couple weeks ago that you do watch White Lotus. You all caught up on White Lotus. I told you my wife and I started the show literally 3 weeks ago, and I told you I'll be done by the playoffs, and I made that happen. I'm caught up with season 3. So season 3 is definitely the best season of the 3, in my opinion. But that ending, I remember hearing beforehand, because I watched the ending a week after or 2 weeks after it actually happened. But everybody was like all freaked out and like shocked by the ending, and I'm watching the show. I'm like, what were you so freaked out about? Like, there's nothing here that really shocked me. Like, it was kind of standard for me. I mean, maybe I'm in my feelings a little bit, though, but I wasn't as stunned at the ending as everybody thought was.
Yeah, I didn't like I didn't like the ending, and it was a very good season. I probably like season 2 better than season 3, just because I didn't really like the ending
Okay.
of season 3. And season 1 was great too. So I mean, like, I don't have a problem with any of them.
What
I just
what is wrong with the ending on 3?
The ending was disappointing because I feel like, I read a screenwriting book one time, and it was basically talking about how, like, character arcs and evolving as people and whatnot. And so I just feel like you wind up walking away from that season, and there really isn't like one likable character at the end of the day that leaves the island. I mean, you could make an argument.
Point of the show, though, because like,
Yeah,
others like one character on any of these seasons, actually.
Yeah, I guess, but I mean, you could make an argument in the second season, like Michael Imperioli and his son, like, while not necessarily like likable, like, they learned something and we're trying to evolve as people and whatnot. But I mean, like Guy Talk, for example, in the thing, like, the whole thing was about him being a Buddhist, and then at the end, he winds up, killing Walton Goggins, and for the money and the women, basically, and all that. So I mean, and to my girlfriend's point, it's like, not every ending has to be happy. And so, like, I agree, like, No Country for Old Men is one of my favorite movies ever. I love the book too, mainly because of that premise that it's not necessarily a happy ending. It's more of a statement about society and about life and all that. So I mean, like, I get that. And there were also some loose ends that I feel like weren't tied up, like the Russians that robbed the resort. Like, basically, the guy
season 2, right?
No. In season 3, when Valentine went to Guy Talk at the.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And basically said, like, I know you know what happened. Like, if you tell on us, like, we're done. Like, they never explored that story any further. Like, I feel like that robbery was a major point in the beginning of the show, and they didn't really go anywhere with it. It was basically just like, okay, I won't tell anybody. So it's like,
so that show, like, I noticed there's a pattern to show. And watching the 3 seasons, this is what I realized about White Lotus, is that you have, like, these subplots, all these, like, different stories, people on the island, and you'll have a happy ending with one core. You have a sad ending with a tragic ending, one core, and you have a, okay, well, we're good, but I gotta come face the music kind of thing. In this case, the tragic ending was the English girl, with the guy that died, that got murdered after he shot his father, who found out was his father. There is, which is another tragedy, of course. Then you have the part where, like, the 3 women who had their little infighting for a little while. That's the happy ending. They're good. You know what I mean? Yeah. What happens in Thailand stays in Thailand. And then, of course, you have the family. The family, of course, where they evade tragedy with their son. Yeah. And the father, who's a fucking moron, for the record. I hate that motherfucker throughout the entire show. And it got worse and worse. He made stupid ass decisions, and then put his kid at risk of dying. Because he didn't want to face the music for shit that he knows he did wrong. He came to acceptance.
Yeah, and that was also another one of my, I don't want to say plot holes, but the thing that I didn't like about the episode is that, like, the only way they touched upon that is that they're on the boat headed back, and he's like, things are going to change for us, but we'll get through it as a family. That was it. There was no uncomfortable.
Well, you're assuming he's going to come to justice, and whatever happens to the process happens.
Yeah, but I would have liked to have seen a little more from that, given that the entire show was about him being in trouble. Really, the resolution was just, you'll find out about it later, so the audience never finds out about it. You just assume that it happens.
That depends. So this show and how it's structured is typically a fresh season, a fresh cast.
Sure.
But there has been some carryover, of course, with the Tanya and Greg story. That has gone 3 seasons, and she died in season 2, but in season 3, Greg carries on. He's in Thailand, all that. Maybe one of these stories have a carry on in season 4. Maybe that's the story that has to carry on. I don't know. Who knows?
And do they bring John Grease back, or Grice, however you pronounce it? Do they bring him back for season 4? Because he's been the only.
Who was he again? John
Greg/Gary.
Right. He's still alive. He gave the money.
Yeah.
Belinda,
so the season $5 million. So the season ends with him giving Belinda the money, and him, at his house, drinking a cocktail and, winking, as he's tipping his cocktail. So I mean, like, is he the guy that comes back for season 4, or has it just been played out with his timeline because he paid off Belinda?
Where do you go with that at that point now? I mean, there isn't. I think that ends right there. I think that's it.
Yeah, no, I would think so too. But he's the only character that would be eligible to be in all 4 seasons. I'm saying. Because he's been in
all 4, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
Belinda, she got her money. She's not going to do the business there in Thailand with the guy, and everybody. I think what we realize watching this show is that no matter how good a person is, Belinda's a good person. You know, you have that one girl that was like the security guard who's in love with the girl, but the girl's nice and all that. But then, like, when he finds out he's not as like he's not pushing to better himself, she backs away because of that, and almost has like a kind of like a gold digger kind of thing. What we realize in this show is that no matter how nice people you are, no matter how nice we are as human beings, we're flawed. We do have biases. We do things according to how we feel. Belinda had every intention of trying to do a business with this guy or something of that nature, and then she took it and ran the money and ran instead. So everybody has flaws in the way. So some people are more flawed than others, obviously. So that's the takeaway of the show, and every season has that same dynamic. There's really no one you really do like there's people you like more or like less and are annoyed by, but I think the moral of this entire show is that everybody's fucking flawed, dude.
Yeah, no, that's true. I guess I just wish the characters weren't as flawed as they wound up being. Like every one of them was flawed to the point where I don't know that any of them were likable. But you're right.
Oh, I agree with you, 100%.
But that is life. So no, I do get that.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, it is a satire also too on, I guess the way it was written is like white privilege, rich folks who, you know, and that whole thing. I guess I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess the conservatives will call it a woke show. I guess I don't know. I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, there was a comment in the first episode about them not wanting to talk about Trump at dinner. So I mean, you know, it was
you know, they did talk about it, and then
although not in like a positive or negative way. It's like one is clearly a Republican, that's Leslie Bibb's character, and then Carrie Coon is obviously, you know, a Democrat, and then I don't know that Michelle Monaghan.
The girl that voted for Trump in the show was independent.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, but that's also code for probably a lot of people. That's code for right wing.
Yeah.
So whatever.
So they did touch on it, but didn't make like a huge deal about it. But it was broached, I guess you could say. So
right. So I do like the show, though. I do like the show. The ending was a little meh, but
yeah, I love it too. I'll watch season 4 and I'll look forward to it. So
yeah. Any word on when that's coming out?
No, you know, it's funny. I listened to a podcast with Bill Simmons maybe about 2 months ago, and the first part of the podcast was basketball. The second part was an interview with one of the producers from White Lotus. So this was like after episode 1, basically.
Right. Okay.
And he said that Mike White, the director, creator, writer, all that, doesn't like cold weather. So, you know, they didn't have any spots, but I guess it's fair to assume that it's not going to be like in the Swiss Alps or something like that. I feel like it's probably most likely going to be warm weather, be it
Caribbean, probably.
Yeah, Caribbean, Australia, New Zealand, Greece. You know, like I guess Italy would be kind of close to Greece. Maybe it's too close to season 2, but I don't know. But I would assume that if you're just guessing places, it's probably warm weather. Maybe not like Canada in the winter or the Swiss Alps or something like that.
Right. Oh, you're a big TV guy, huh?
Not huge. You know, I love that show, but I wouldn't say that I watch a ton of shows. I say I watch a lot more sports.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Yeah. Have you watched that Celtics documentary yet?
I haven't watched it yet. No, that's probably like an off-season watch for me.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it to finish. Like, it's a 10-parter. Bill Simmons did it, of course.
Yeah.
And I was going to start watching. It was like, you know what? Let me wait for it to finish. Let me finish what because they're putting out week to week. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna wait because knowing me, I rather just binge the entire thing in one shoot because that stuff I can't wait a week to watch. I can't.
Yeah.
So that's probably gonna end up being an off-season thing for me as well too. I get a lot of my TV content I watch. You know, unless I'm watching a show with my wife, I do that pretty much during the summer. Like once basketball is coming to an end, coming to an end, I whatever shows I'm behind on, I'll just catch up on. So I got a lot of shows I'm behind on, a lot. Like I didn't finish Succession. I didn't finish that yet.
Yeah, I still have to finish The Bear. So I think I have like 2 episodes left. So
I haven't started that show yet, and it's on my list of shows to watch.
Oh, okay.
So what I do in my house, I let you go, is that my wife and I, we have show because she's a big TV watcher. So what we do is that we have a list on our phones of like shows that her and I are going to watch, and then have shows that I'm going to watch. So if the shows that her and I are going to watch, we're going to obviously checklist those and watch as much as we can. And the shows that I'm going to watch, I watch on my own time, obviously. So, but it's hard because I like again sports, basketball, you already know wrestling still a big deal in my house, so I have that. So, and then sometimes I get into these little projects I'm doing, so I mean, it's tough to balance all that. 24 hours isn't enough, man. So,
no, I hear
and then,
you.
And then I'm a dad and I'm a husband. So, you got to do all that too. So, but yeah, but like I said, White Lotus was a good show. I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to season 4. So anyway, follow Greg on X at Greg at Gee Hrinya NBA. And anything else anyone add, or that's it?
No, just looking forward to Knicks Pistons tonight. So next time we talk,
don't tell me you froze. Okay.
I'm here.
Yeah, 3-game slate today, man.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. And look, a week later we'll have a lot to talk about. So.
Yep. Anyway, like I said, follow me on Twitter, of course, also at EJ Christian 7. Earnestly Podcast, all podcast catchers on the audio side. Subscribe to the podcast also on YouTube at Earnestly Pod on YouTube and on TikTok at Earnestly Pod. Until the next